Hi everybody, this is part one of a two-part video on how you know it's time to retire. In part one, we're going to talk about the money. Coming up next. Hi everybody, my name is Dee Burks with Retirement Rescue, where we learn how to make money, save money, and live well in retirement. Now, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe and share this video with someone you think might could use it. Today, we're going to be talking all about how you know when it's time to retire. I can't even tell you how many times I get this question. How do I know when to push the button? When to say, okay, it's time to retire? Now, first of all, let's talk about the idea of retirement. It's not the traditional, oh, when you turn a certain age, an arbitrary age, in my opinion, you retire. It's not like that anymore. You know, people are living longer, they're enjoying life more, and really retirement these days is all about financial independence. And I'm a big advocate of the second you can be financially independent, where you're not dependent on that job you go to every day, retire. Time's up. It's really true that the sooner you can retire, the more enjoyment you will get out of your retirement. None of us know when we're going to have a medical issue or crisis. None of us know how long we have. And those of you who know something about my own story, I had a spouse that died at 50. None of us know. If we hadn't spent the money and taken the time to travel before then, he would have never got to enjoy any of that, and he never made it to retirement. So the sooner you can retire and enjoy the rest of your life, the better. How do you know you have enough money? There is a lot of talk out there, and believe me, all the talk out there is absolutely just that. It's talk. Everyone's situation is different, but there's this idea that, oh, you need $1 million. Well, maybe that's true and maybe that's not. If you live somewhere like San Francisco, you need more like $3 to $4 million, just because cost of living is so freaking high. If you live somewhere like I do, where cost of living is very low, I need much less to retire, $300,000 to $400,000, and I could easily retire just on investments. But there are many, many other ways to invest without having to have that much money. And one of the ways I talk about on this channel all the time are creating multiple streams of income, either through rental property, side businesses, side gigs, that can replace your current income. Now, if you've ever gone into your HR department and you've talked to them about your retirement and you've gotten the numbers, a lot of times that calculation gives you about 80% of your current income. And I've never really understood that. I mean, I understand the theory behind it, but it doesn't work in practical life. The theory is when you retire, your expenses are going to be way lower. Now, here's the problem with that. When you're working, yes, you have expenses that you won't have when you retire. You have clothes, you have traveling back and forth to work. There are certain expenses that go with work that you don't have when you retire. However, when you're at work, what's going on at your house? Nothing. What are you doing all day? Working. Okay, now let's say you retire. Are you going to sit in your house and stare at the wall? Seriously. Because if you want to go do things, if you want to play golf, if you want to go see the grandkids, if you want to go to Europe, all of that stuff takes money over and above your regular monthly expenses. So the idea that somehow you're going to live this fabulous retired life on 80% of your current income is completely invalid for most people. And while we're at it, let's talk about this for a sec. When people retire, often they spend the first few years, the first 2 to 3 years really enjoying retirement. They go all those places they've always wanted to go. They go see all those people they've always wanted to see, the grands, the friends, the family members, the reunions. They go do all of that. They travel to Europe. They take a cruise. And the next thing they know, their retirement account is about 30% less than they thought it would be. That happens a lot. People retire and then they immediately start drawing down the principal of that retirement account because they want to enjoy retirement But just the way compound interest works for you when you're building that account, it works against you when you're removing money. When you start removing that principal, it means there's even less money to make money for your future. So if you start drawing that retirement account down and you draw it down 20%, 30% in those first few years, that money's not there to continue making you money. And when you sit and you do those projections with your financial person, those projections are based on that money basically staying there and you removing none to very little of that principal. So you can really get yourself into a bad way if you don't pay attention not only to the amount of money you're really going to need, not a projection of 80%, the amount of money you're really going to need, and then you build up enough where you're not damaging that principal really quickly. Now, one of the issues with retirement is that people don't pre-retire. And here's what I mean by that. I've told people for years, the best thing you can do before you retire is do a trial run, a pre-retirement. Think about how you're going to live. Okay, start lowering your expenses. If you are going to sell your house eventually and maybe retire somewhere, sell it now. Make those plans now. Don't wait until you retire to then go and try and do all those things. Because guess what? You haven't gotten used to living on less. You haven't really thought long term about the reality of relocating or living in a smaller home. So you haven't made those plans, and they can be way more expensive than you think they're going to be. And, you just had not adjusted your lifestyle. You've got to pre-retire while you're working and start figuring out, okay, what is retirement really going to look like for us? Are we going to travel? How much are we going to need to really spend? Because it's going to be more than you think it will. It's always more than you think it will be. Any expense is always more than you think it'll be. And those expenses will escalate. So do some real calculation with real numbers on what the next 5 years is going to look like and the next 10 years is going to look like. Unfortunately, a lot of people retire. They spend money like drunk sailors the first 3 years, and then they completely contract. They're afraid to go anywhere. They're afraid to do anything. And really what has happened is they've realized they're going to run out of money. And then what are they going to do? Are you going to go to work at 80? What are you going to do if you run out of money? The fear of running out of money becomes very, very real. And so they start to contract their life and they become very unhappy. Very unhappy. So a lot of planning is required. And if you can possibly take off work for a number of weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, if your work allows you to take a leave of absence where you can maybe do a couple of months, do that. Really think now, when you go on vacation, by the time you're at the end of that vacation, aren't you a little anxious to go back to work? Most people are, because we as human beings, we need to be productive. We need to feel like we're doing something. And sitting at home staring at the wall leads to depression fast. So it's really important that you plan every aspect of the financial part of retirement, because financial stress is horrible. Now, retirement means different things to different people. It's not unusual for you to be married to someone for 30 years and you finally get to the point you're thinking about retirement only to realize you have very different ideas of what that means. What does that mean in terms of going places or spending money or living where you live? What does that mean? Having those discussions early in a type of pre-retirement readiness is how you avoid issues. What they call gray divorce, which is divorce of people over 60, is getting more and more prevalent. One of the reasons is people are living so long. And so you sit down and realize your ideas of retirement are completely different. You've become different people. And each spouse starts to think, you know what, I don't want to live the next 25 years with this person. And they divorce. And your assets are immediately cut in half. Gray divorce can be incredibly devastating for your retirement plans. So pre-retirement planning, getting people on board with the program, what you're going to do, understanding what that means, and having a good solid relationship is one of the best ways to protect yourself long-term in retirement. Now think, how many times have you seen someone retire and then 2 or 3 years later they're back doing the exact same job they were doing before? You see it a lot, right? Well, in the next part of this video series, we're going to address why that happens. All the factors you need to take into account besides money that will lead to a happy and healthy retirement. See you next video.